Stories from Real Life is sponsored by Forever, the digital shareable platform that preserves all of your precious memories forever.
This is Melvin E. Edwards, the host of Stories from Real Life. One of the things I'm passionate about when I'm not doing this podcast is genealogy. And if you've ever researched ancestors, you begin to understand how short generations really are. That's why it's important to preserve those memories while you still have the chance. And that's where Forever comes in. Forever is the world's first permanent, shareable digital home for all your memories. Look, your photos, videos, and family stories deserve more than temporary cloud storage. With a Forever storage account, your files are guaranteed safe and protected for your lifetime plus 100 years. Your lifetime plus 100 years. And here's what I love. No endless monthly fees. You can make a one-time payment or break it down to 24 monthly installments and you own your storage. It's all backed by the Forever Guarantee Fund, built to preserve your legacy for generations. Check out my website, podcastreallife.com, and click on sponsors or the link in the show notes. Your memories are the stories from your real life. Forever makes sure they truly last forever.
Welcome to Stories from Real Life. Today's guest is Dr. Nelva Lee, a candidate for Georgia Superintendent of Schools. She is the founder and CEO of Concrete Build Financing, served over 20 years as CEO of a vocational school, has more than 2 decades of healthcare experience, and has taught over 10 years in academia as an adjunct professor. She is a Governor Kemp-appointed member of the Department of Community Health Board, Vice Chairman of the Henry County Pregnancy Resource Center, and a former state Senate candidate. This is Stories from Real Life with Melvin E. Edwards, and today's story is Dr. Nelva Lee's, From the Classroom to the Campaign.
You are listening to Stories from Real Life, a podcast by engaging storytellers for engaged story listeners. Here's your host, author and journalist, Melvin E. Edwards.
Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Stories from Real Life. I'm your host, Melvin E. Edwards. Thank you for joining me for the podcast where our personal stories remind us how much we can learn from each other. What happens when a homeschool mom, healthcare leader, and entrepreneur steps into a race to shape Georgia's future? Dr. Nelva Lee is my guest today, and she joins us to discuss the fight for students, families, and a school system built for every child. Dr. Lee, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me today, Melvin.
I'm looking forward to the conversation. So I want to begin not with your resume, but with the person behind it. Let's find out a little bit about you. So you've served as a homeschool mom, substitute teacher, healthcare administrator, adjunct professor, and now you're a candidate for the Georgia Superintendent of Schools. When you reflect on that journey, what is the thread that ties everything together?
I really would say just doing the right thing for my family. I would say that that's the thread. At every one of those junctures that you just mentioned, I'm always thinking about my family. I spoke to a superintendent recently, and she said that her number one goal was if it wasn't good enough for her family, it wasn't good enough for the students. And I have the same mentality, really, that I'm very fortunate that I was able to give my children choice and to be able to match their needs with their academic environment. And I believe that that shouldn't be a unique story. I believe that everyone should have access to the particular learning environment where their child can thrive. And so if I was able to do it for my family, I believe that I should be able to fight for all families in Georgia to be able to have the same access.
Okay, that makes sense. So what moment in your early life or your career awakened your calling to serve through education and community health?
It really came about, I would say really by accident. As I said, my number one goal was always to do the right thing by my children and by my family. So I went to school to become a healthcare administrator. Right, I loved healthcare. Started off going to school for nursing, and halfway through nursing school, realized that it would take me a very long time to reach up to the administration, and I could just circumvent all that by just changing my major. I changed my major to health administration and started working in management right out of school. I got it, ended up getting my master's and then my doctorate in health administration as well, and absolutely loved it. Loved the field. And while I was working as a director of patient advocacy at the Grady Health System, which is one of the largest public health hospitals here in Georgia, one of my programs was interpreting services. And I realized that there weren't enough training programs because I tried to get all of my interpreters trained and qualified, and there just weren't enough training programs available. And I thought, this is a problem that needs to be solved. And so I went first to my CEO, and he passed on it, and I decided to start on my own. And it just so happened that starting that business coincided with my son, my first son, really starting to display some symptoms of autism. And so I had to pull him out of the learning center that he was in just to give him some more attention, really, just one-on-one attention. He was brilliant. He still is a very, very smart child, just really some developmental and social issues. And so it coincided perfectly with that. You know, if I look back, you know, hindsight is 2020. When I look back, I go, that was just a perfect alignment. Obviously, God was in control, but I was just doing what was best for my family. I knew that he needed his mom, and at the same time, I was starting this new venture with this vocational school that I started, training bilingual individuals to become medical interpreters. And so it ended up where I continued to homeschool him, you know, from those early ages, and he was homeschooled all the way through fifth grade. And it was the best thing for him at the time. He needed that extra attention, and he needed the freedom to advance academically as fast as he wanted to without having to worry about all those social issues, which he was able to eventually catch up. And then the same for my youngest daughter, who we adopted from the foster care system in Puerto Rico. She came to us 8 years old with a learning disability, language barrier, the whole nine. And while we had her in public school for a few months, initially, she learned English quickly, but wasn't learning much of anything else. And so we found that for her, the best learning environment for her was the Montessori style school. And so I want to be able to not be the outlier in this, Melvin. All families that are listening to me have these struggles, right? Your listeners know exactly what I'm talking about, and yet their only option is a school that does not meet their child's educational needs. That shouldn't be. That is why I'm such a huge proponent and a champion of school choice.
Okay. So many leaders talk about purpose, but very few that I've run across can trace it through so many sectors as you can. So when did you first realize your life might not follow a single lane?
Probably early on. So I knew that I have very good leadership skills. Because like I said, that's why I changed my major early in college. I've always had very good leadership skills, able to motivate and inspire people. And I think God has always given me a spirit of advocacy. You know, if I see something broken, I want to fix it, you know, especially if it's someone that is experiencing some sort of injustice or some sort of where the system is just not working for them. I feel that, you know, to whom much is given, much is required. So God has blessed me. I need to do my part to be a blessing to others. And so whether that's in healthcare or in education or, you know, in my volunteer roles, I always try to make the world a little bit better for others.
Okay. So let's shift a little bit to your professional and executive leadership.
Well,
So you founded Concrete Build Financing and previously served 20 years as CEO of a vocational school.
correct.
So what is one leadership lesson from entrepreneurship that most shaped how you think about education?
So education, every superintendent will tell you, every principal will tell you, it's a village, right? No one person can accomplish that. And that's one of the reasons why I want to be able to empower parents. Because if you feel that the school system alone is going to teach your children, that is not the answer, right? Schools know that engaged parents is the best way to ensure that a child is going to thrive. What entrepreneurship has taught me is just that in being able to work with a lot of different individuals to accomplish a goal, right? CEOs that think that they can do it all by themselves find out very quickly that that is not the case. They have to be able to delegate. They have to know how to delegate. They have to know how to reach across the aisle. They have to know how to, you know, get a deal done, right? All of those skill sets come into play when you're dealing with a very large, complex school system, when you're dealing with principals and superintendents and all the stakeholders that are involved in the school system, not just the parents and the students, but you also have the curriculums and the textbooks, companies and all the like. And so you have to know how to work with others well. You have to know how to delegate well. And those are definitely the skill sets that I've learned. 20 years managing my vocational school, and now with my concrete build financing entrepreneurship.
Okay. So vocational training is often overlooked in K through 12 conversations in education. So in your view, what would a Georgia school system look like if career readiness was valued as much as college prep?
Definitely. So I'm going to take you back to my own experience first. When I was a junior in high school, I decided that I was going to enter the healthcare field. And so I went ahead and got a certificate and a vocational certificate so that I could pay my way through college. And it worked beautifully because as soon as I finished my degree, I was able to get a good paying job because I'd had experience in the industry. And so I believe that we shouldn't just say that vocational school is for those that are not pursuing college. It should be for everyone. And so I would like to see Georgia graduates, high school graduates, also graduate with a vocational certification. So not just with a high school diploma, but also with a vocational certification. So it will help those that are college bound because they're able to get sort of like a, built-in internship, right? But for those that are not college, bound, this is a career, not just a job. And so many of our students, when they graduate high school, they don't have a way to feed themselves or put food on their table. They're getting 2 or 3, fast food jobs or, menial jobs, trying to cobble that together. Vocational certification is a game changer for them. You can get electrician, welding, plumbing. These are all 6-figure jobs, and 6-figure income careers. But not just that, you have all of the myriad of vocational certifications that you can get in healthcare, in the tech world. There's tons of certifications for coding and the like. Or even say you want to go to become a lawyer someday, you can get a paralegal certification. So there's tons of certifications that you can get that will give you an actual career, not just a job.
Okay, that all makes sense. So you were appointed by Governor Kemp to the Department of Community Health Board.
Correct.
What did you learn from your government level health policy that now informs what you think about school policy?
So for starters, how slow as molasses government can be, especially if you come from the entrepreneurial side, right? You realize just how slow everything goes. I have been on countless of boards, but most of the boards that I had been prior to this were, from corporations or nonprofits, where, believe it or not, things even in nonprofits moved a lot faster than in the government sector. And so just getting an awareness of that and that giving me an open eye as to what to expect, what you can and can't accomplish very quickly. That's why, even when presidents become, their first, 100 days, that becomes a big deal because very few things can be accomplished. Presidents have so much goodwill those first 100 days that they can push things a little bit faster than normal. But really and truly, government just is very, very slow in moving, especially compared to corporations and even nonprofits.
All right. So, how has your work as the vice chairman of the Henry County Pregnancy Resource Center shaped your views on how schools should support families and not just students?
So I was actually the chair prior to becoming the vice chair.
Okay.
I've served on this board for going on 10 years now, and this is one of the nonprofits that I was mentioning. Um, that nonprofit is near and dear to my heart because it's sort of like on the front lines to the crisis that many women experience when they are pregnant, find themselves, pregnant with a child and just don't have the means, right? The school systems inherit a lot of these, issues once the child is old enough. You have a lot of kids that have very poor food availability. Food insecurity is very high in the public school system. Homelessness is on the rise in the school system. And so you are having to deal with all of these different crises as an administrator, as a principal. The need for social workers has definitely increased in the school system. So definitely my experience working with this nonprofit has given me a front seat view in the needs of our community.
All right. So you previously ran for state senate there in Georgia,
Correct.
and now you're running for superintendent of schools. So what did you learn from the first campaign that's helping you in this one?
Well, that it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's just a long process of getting your name out there and letting the voters know what your platform is. Since I started actually campaigning last year, and I started going to the various political organizations and any group that met, I would ask them if they would invite me to give them my platform speech. And so I've done women's groups and political groups, churches, you name it. And so I go and I present my platform. I'm now doing walking my neighborhood and knocking on doors and introducing myself directly to citizens. It's just a long process. And then obviously closer to the election itself, I'll be doing more digital and mail media. But it's amazing to me how expensive it really is. It's just how expensive a campaign can be. It's nothing to spend thousands of dollars just getting your name out there. Obviously, I would like for there to be some sort of campaign reform because with the reason why incumbents have such a leg up is because they have the name recognition and also a huge war chest, right, that they've been able to accumulate over years. And so it makes it very difficult for incumbents. And I'm certain that those founding fathers did not intend for that to be. So definitely we should have some campaign reform tied to term limits. And I think that will definitely shake things up, not just in Washington, but also at the state level, state and local level.
Okay, you mentioned being involved in your church. So I'd like to sort of transition into how your faith is involved in your public service and leadership. So I see that you have been a prayer partner at Joy FM, and you're deeply rooted in your church. So how do you integrate your faith into public service while serving a diverse community?
Well, for starters, I would say that my faith informs everything that I do. It informs the priorities that I mentioned earlier. About family first. God first and family, then everything else, and that's not going to change. But it also, and you mentioned diverse community. Not everybody obviously shares my faith, but I can love them regardless. I if I see someone in pain, I'm not going to ask them first, are they a Christian before I help them? That is not going to happen. So my faith informs me to love everyone and to care for everyone and to not want to see injustice anywhere.
All right. So what's one misconception people have when they hear Christian-based leadership?
Probably that it's dogmatic, that it's discriminatory in some way. Unfortunately, we haven't had the best of leaders to portray that. And so I'm eager to be able to portray a different view of what that means. But yes, I would say that in the past, people that claim to be Christian were probably a little bit less engaging and less accepting of others' point of view.
All right. So where do you draw your strength when criticism, politics, and your public visibility becomes personal?
Oh, and this is a very, very good question because I'm constantly having to do this, but really just keeping my eyes on the prize. It's the main thing. You can get very discouraged very easily when people are throwing rocks at you and disparaging your name, because I've had it all. Trust me. But it's important to just keep your eyes focused on the vision and the goal. That really is for me what keeps me from spiraling, for sure.
Okay. So you've written at least a couple of books that I've found in my research: To Stay and Fight, which seems to be about endurance through adversity, and then Be the Superhero in Your Story, which suggests empowerment. So when you look at Georgia's education system, what do you believe it needs more? Endurance, empowerment, or something else?
I would definitely say empowerment. As I mentioned, I think that parents definitely need to be empowered to be engaged. We're constantly saying that parents are not engaged. They're not, there for their children. They're not helping with the homework, all of the above. But guess what? We're not empowering them. We're not giving them the tools to be engaged. And so I definitely believe that. So as you mentioned, Be the Superhero of Your Story, I wrote in direct response to COVID and all the anxiety and depression that I saw from young people, especially. That suicide rates went up, shortly during and shortly after COVID. Drug use and all those mental health ills increased. And so Be the Superhero of Your Story was written in response to that, really trying to help people to develop resilience and to redefine their challenges. So whenever you're faced with a challenge, you don't have to see it as the end of the world, right? One of my favorite quotes from Tony Robbins is, life is happening for you, not happening to you. It's all about how you frame the experience that you're having. And I believe that I've learned that over the years, and I wanted to share a little bit of that with others because it just broke my heart to see so many people with anxiety and depression and just feeling like they were at their limit.
So if your life was a book that you were writing, you're writing your memoirs, let's say, which chapter would you want students to read first that would give them encouragement?
Oh my gosh, that's a good one. I think my entire life would be an encouragement to the students. I've had quite a bit of challenges in my life that I've overcome, and a lot of my books are that, just kind of like showing people how I've overcome my challenges. Stay and Fight is about overcoming difficulty in marriage. Victorious is about overcoming my own bouts with depression. So every single one of my books has little pieces of my future memoir already in them. But I would say definitely the thread that goes through my entire life is definitely my faith. I became a Christian very early on, and I believe that it's because of my faith that I've been able to overcome so many things. Not just overcome them, but thrive because of them, right? It's like the challenges, I didn't just go through the challenge. The challenge made me better in the end. And so, and I would love for others to have the same experience.
For the next couple questions, let's talk about your aspiration to be the superintendent of schools for Georgia. So if you were already the superintendent, what is the most urgent first action you would take?
So two of my signature initiatives, right? The school choice initiatives. I believe that we can expand on the Promise Scholarship Act. Currently, we have a Promise Scholarship Act in Georgia that was passed into law last year that allowed $6,500 to every family whose child attends the bottom 25 percentile school, right, academically. And it's only for those who are currently in the school system. So I like to expand that to $8,000 for any family. It's no regulations attached. It's their tax dollars, Melvin. Let them spend it in an education system that allows their child to thrive. All right? That is my number one objective when I get into office. And I believe that we can do that quickly. All right. I don't think it's going to take forever. I told you, government is like molasses, but this is just expanding 6,500 and take away all the from 6,500 to 8,000 and taking away all those regulations. And then the second thing that I believe that we can do very quickly is ensuring that all of our students have a vocational certificate upon graduation. So currently in the state of Georgia, we have dual enrollment credits that they can get for free, right? Up to 30. And so I'm simply saying allocate those towards vocational school. It can still help towards completing high school. It can still help towards credits and in college, but allocate them towards a vocational school. And that's simply a mandate. That's something that a mandate can accomplish. It adds zero penny to the budget. I mean, it's budget neutral. And so those would be my first two initiatives. Definitely, I would go around the state of Georgia, just like I'm doing now, but even much more with a much more urgency to meet all of my superintendents and all of my principals, because I want to know on the ground, what are your specific challenges? What are your specific issues and concerns that I can address quickly? I've already started speaking with superintendents. Some of them have told me, one of our main issues right now is absenteeism. Prior to COVID, we would hold families more to the fire, bringing their children to school, and now it's more lackadaisical. I would address that easily. Again, those are things that you can just do with leadership, with a mandate, and have those things come around and change very quickly. Those policies change very quickly.
Okay, so let's break up the components of school system. So what does the school system look like when it honors parents as partners, teachers as professionals, yes, and students as individuals, rather than a one-size-fits-all?
You're speaking my language. That is exactly what I would like to see occur in the school system. I'll tell you, I like to model our school system similar to what is happening in Florida right now. So Florida has over 700 charter schools. They have the $8,000 voucher that I'm talking about. They have true school choice because their budget is set up where the money follows the child. Here in Georgia, we have QBE, very complicated budgetary system for schools where the money follows the institution. So it's a net loss for a school whenever they lose a child to a charter school or to homeschool. We shouldn't have that. Schools shouldn't have to worry about their financing being taken away just because a family member decides to send their child to a charter school or to homeschool or a private school. Okay, so I do believe that Florida has a really good system. I'm sure it's not perfect, but it's definitely a system that I like to emulate. And they're first in the nation, in the school rankings, compared to Georgia's 38th place. So 38 out of 50 is pretty atrocious to me. And those, by the way, we declined in our standing under the current superintendent, who's been there 11 years, going on 12. And our 70% of our fourth graders are not proficient in reading, and that's a decline under his tenure. 76% of our eighth graders are not proficient in math. That's a decline under his tenure. So I would say let's stop going backwards and stop going backwards. And let's move forward with a new vision and definitely a new passion into seeing just that our schools, our parents, and our students are all integrated.
All right, then what about the teachers aspect of it? How would you support teachers?
So I can tell you one thing. Teachers, if you hear them, most teachers that I have spoken to talk about behaviors. That is so different to teach today than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago because of the myriad of behavior issues that they're dealing with. I'm also on the steering committee of a program called LifeWise, and it's a national program. And they have proven results. Any school system that they are in, they see a decrease in behavior issues, a decrease in anxiety and depression. And you know what they do? It's the biblically based character development. And that's what they do. And so they partner with the schools. They ask the parents if their child can be taken out during this hour-long biblically based character development training. And they see the results. And so I would, first day I'm in office, ask all of my superintendents to green light LifeWise in their district. Because it's, like I said, if the teachers are telling you that behaviors is the main issue, suspension is not the answer. Okay, suspending kids is what we're doing currently. That is not the answer. We need to train our children. It's lack of training in character development that needs to happen.
Okay. So how should Georgia redefine success so that it's not just the term doesn't just mean high achieving academic performers, but somebody who's, let's say, gifted with building things or a future mechanic or entrepreneur? How would you redefine that success?
So I believe that when we roll out our vocational program where everyone gets a certificate of at a vocational school or a trade school, that is how we redefine success. Because passing a test is not success, right? So I don't know how it is in Texas, but here in Georgia, schools shut down from February to the end of April, teaching to a milestones test. That is a disgrace to me. So rather than teaching, we're simply teaching kids how to pass a test. And that needs to stop, okay? Under my superintendent, we will stop that. So it's all about making sure that we are training children to their passion, right? And ensuring that they are workforce ready. That is how I would define success. Not whether or not you go to college. Some kids are going to go to college regardless, right? But it's not for everyone. But everyone can obtain a trade or a vocational school that's going to allow them to put food on their table and become full members of society, contributing members to society.
Yeah, and here in Texas, we do have those tests. They're called STAR tests here, and students have to pass it several times from between like second grade and 12th grade. So yeah, we have that. Sounds like we have sort of the same thing, just a different name.
Right.
All right. So last couple of questions here before I let you go. One question is personal. So you've been married to what you call your best friend. His name is Donnie. You've been married for 25 years and you have 3 children. So how has being a wife and mother shaped the policies you believe that you believe in most strongly?
It has completely changed everything about how I see the world, right? So as I mentioned earlier, being a good wife and mother was the priority. And so everything else, my career just had to fall around that. But I'm very grateful that it informed my career. It informed my journey. And so I'm very grateful for that. Definitely being a wife was a challenge for me, I'm gonna share this with you, Melvin. Both my parents, they divorced very early when I was just a toddler, and they both went on to, two more marriages, right? So it was a challenge if I didn't see growing up what a good marriage looks like. But I'm very grateful that I'm a believer, and the Bible tells you what a good marriage looks like, or at least what are some of the tenets of it. And so I would say that my journey to becoming a good wife and a good mother to my children has informed my career, and it has informed who I am today. I'm a completely different person standing here today than I was, 20, 30 years ago, for sure.
Okay. So as we wind down this conversation, I'd like for you to imagine that you're speaking directly to a Georgia student who's listening in on this podcast. So what is one thing you hope stays with that student that will help them 10 years from now?
And this is one that I'm grateful for that question, because I love to be able to have, assemblies where I can speak directly to students once I become superintendent of schools. And what I want all students to understand is that they have the power to control their future, right? So many people, especially students, feel that adults are controlling them, right? That they are powerless, and that is not the case. You have power, and you have all the abilities needed to be a fully contributing member of society. So no matter what your grades are, right? No matter whether or not you're going to college bound or not, you have the ability to be a full contributing member of society. And here's why. Everyone has a purpose. We are all born with one, right? One of my pastors used to say, the two important days of your life, the day that you were born and the day that you discovered your purpose. So as a student, your number one goal right now is to discover your purpose. Find out what exactly you are here on earth for, okay? And here's two books that might help you with that. The first is the Purpose-Driven book. I love that, by Rick Warren. And the other is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it's not necessarily a purpose book, but it is a book that's going to point you to the tenets, the habits that you need to follow to be a purpose person, a person of purpose, a person whose life is about achieving a greater goal, not just, going through the day. And so those two books, I highly recommend them. But listen to me, students, you have the power to achieve all of your goals and your vision in life. And if you don't have one, get one. Get a vision for your life.
All right, Dr. Lee, I appreciate you being here today. It's been a great conversation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Can I give your listeners how they can find me?
Absolutely. And I'll put your links in the show notes.
Wonderful. So if anyone would like to access any of the books that I mentioned, or view my other podcast interviews or my speeches, you can go to drnelvalee.com. That's drnelvalee.com.
Okay. Again, like I just said, I'll put the link in the show notes and people can access your information. And again, my guest today has been Dr. Nelva Lee, who's a candidate for the Georgia Superintendent of Schools. So if today's episode challenged you, inspired you, or made you think differently about what education could be, share this episode with somebody who cares about the future of Georgia's children and any state's children for that matter.
Yes.
So that's it for today's episode. This is Stories from Real Life. Until next time, don't forget to shine your light wherever you go.
That was Stories from Real Life. Join us again next week for another great storytelling journey. See you next time.